Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews in Washington. Let me start tonight with this Republican effort to scare up right-wing voters with Benghazi and other dark Obama conspiracies and scare off minorities, the young and others who might vote Democrat, with outright voter suppression. Well, this is a double whammy aimed at the elections this November, obviously. One, drive up the suspicious right, including the Second Amendment people, by saying the government is lying to them about the death of U.S. diplomats, about the IRS, about the Fast and Furious campaign to catch cross-border drug dealers. Two, change and restrict voter laws to discourage and confuse Democratic voters. Bottom line, a big Republican victory this November, a veritable thumping of the Democrats, setting the stage for 2 years of administration frustration and Obama hatred that seethes right up until the 2016 election. Well, let's start with this insidious conspiracy mongering designed to convince fringe voters of grand and dark maneuverings here in Washington to betray those serving the country overseas, to, in the words of John Bolton, leave Americans to die at the hands of terrorists, to cheat conservative groups out of their tax dollars and, in some underhanded way, be in cahoots with the international drug trade. The goal? Rile up the right-wing base and ramrod them to the polls. Michael Steele was chairman of the Republican Party. Joan Walsh is editor-at-large of Salon. Both are MSNBC political analysts. Anyway, House Speaker John Boehner, who green-lighted the Benghazi Select Committee, laid out the GOP strategy yesterday. It's about stoking conspiracies in the name of pursuing the truth. Let's listen.
When is the administration going to tell the American people the truth? They've not told them the truth about Benghazi. They've not told the truth about the IRS. They've not told the truth about Fast and Furious. Now, only one would have to guess. If they're not willing to tell the American people the truth, it must not be very pretty. Thanks.
Well, Democrats are criticizing the Republican effort to score political points by stoking these conspiracy theories. Let's listen to Congressman Elijah Cummings on the House vote to hold former IRS official Lois Lerner in contempt of Congress.
This is unprecedented, except in the McCarthy era. And even in that era, it failed. And so, I'm wondering where we're going here.
Well, let's hear Hillary Clinton on the subject of the House Select Committee investigation of Benghazi.
Benghazi, the new investigation. Are you satisfied with the answers, and are you content with what you know what happened?
Absolutely. I mean, of course, there are a lot of reasons why, despite all of the hearings, all of the information that's been provided, some choose not to be satisfied and choose to continue to move forward. That's their choice, and I do not believe there is any reason for it to continue in this way, but they get to call the shots in the Congress.
Let me go right to Michael Steele, former Republican National Chairman. Let me see, Michael, it seems to me that the message here, just to get it straight, is a broad conspiracy that all the Democrats do on all the issues that seem to matter in the erogenous zones of the Republican right is to hide stuff. It's all about hiding stuff. Hiding in Benghazi, hiding on IRS, hiding on this Fast and Furious campaign with a particular goal of going to the hardest right, the gun people, the people that think government is out to get them, not just Democrats, but all government. It seems to be playing to the fringe. That's the way I see it. This isn't for upper middle class voters from the suburbs. This is aimed particularly at the more rural, more suspicious type people who will vote Republican if they do vote. This is to get them out and angry.
Well, it lays down markers, Chris, on a number of issues, and you hit on three of them there. And of course, you're driving your base. I mean, just as we've seen Democrats do in the past and even recently in terms of how Harry Reid has gone out and fomented the wrath of the left to, again, drive that base on a particular issue. So I don't get the hyperactivity or the hypersensitivity to what Republicans are doing in that instance. It all plays itself out ultimately in the end. You've got to get through a primary process, and you've got to figure out how, once you lay down these markers on some of these issues, you either deliver the goods or you're going to get the wrath of the voters at the polls this November who reject your political play. So it's a big risk that they're taking is not necessarily one I would take in all instances as a national chairman, but that's the politics of it right now, and that's where we're coming. We'll see how this plays out for them. I think it's a bit risky, but I completely understand it, and I think you do too, ultimately.
I get it too completely, and I'll ask Joan what do you think before I'll tell you what I think. I want to ask Joan, what do you think of this whole strategy of basically alerting, igniting, turning on, exciting, scaring up, whatever, the right wing, the far right, who are very suspicious of government, period, no matter who's running it, who are willing to believe the IRS is evil and some kind of conspiracy-driven thing,
right,
that they're very concerned about losing their guns to anybody. They don't like this fast and furious thing. And then throw it all in with Benghazi, where basically people like John Bolton are out there saying, we killed one of our diplomats in some sort of betrayal out there in the field. It's really vicious stuff, and I think Boehner is being coached into how to sell it. That's my theory.
Well, he obviously is. I mean, for John Boehner to be bringing up Fast and Furious at this point really smacks of desperation, Chris. I mean, the whole Fast and Furious conspiracy has Eric Holder in cahoots with, you know, the gun control people to set this up to eventually have a big takeaway of guns. That's at the bottom of why they're upset about Fast and Furious, wholly concocted on the fringe of the right and nurtured by Fox News. John Boehner should not be talking about Fast and Furious. He shouldn't be talking about any of this, but that in particular. I just have to say one thing to my friend Michael. I mean, yes, we both sides do it in terms of we do want to get out our base. But when Harry Reid talks about the Koch brothers, they actually are oligarchs who actually are pouring millions of dollars into our political process in large measure to line their own pockets and advance a deeply right-wing agenda. That's not a lie. The rest of this is based on lies. We're now calling Robert Gates a liar, Leon Panetta's a liar. I mean, the Benghazi stuff is really, really dirty, Michael.
Joan, I appreciate that, but the Koch brothers are doing as everybody else is doing on the left and expressing their political views, and they're doing it through their wallets. They're doing it through the political action committees. They're doing it in very legal ways. You can buy it or not buy it. That's your prerogative. The same in terms of what the party is talking about more broadly. Yeah, I get that one level. There may be some concern about, you know, how we do some of this stuff, or do we push that envelope as far as we should? But there are still some substantive questions on all three of those issues that were raised that should be discussed.
Michael,
so what's wrong with that?
You have the floor, Mike. I want to ask you this. Do you believe that Leon Panetta, who is a very credible, moderate Democrat all these years, we've been watching him, do you think he went out there to kill Chris Stevens? Did he let him lie dead in the field? Well, that's what Bolton's out there saying. Do you believe that Lois Lerner, who's a bureaucrat, I don't mean that derogatorily, but she's no politician, was sitting there talking to the Obama people about how to screw the right wing? Do you believe she's in cahoots with the White House? Or is this completely made up?
We're still investigating, Chris. I mean, we don't know what Lois Lerner, because Lois Lerner hasn't told us what Lois Lerner knows.
She's a GS federal employee probably for life, and you're saying she's...
Chris, can I just say something about
Don't do that. Don't use that word with me. It doesn't work, because that says something that you're not a stoner. Don't start talking like one. Go ahead. Go ahead, Joan.
Here's the thing about Lois Lerner. She exercised her Fifth Amendment rights. We all have them. More than that, though, Elijah Cummings has talked about this. Her lawyer made a proffer to the committee, to Darrell Iss's committee, and the committee that Congressman Cummings sits on. He was willing to kind of give a vague outline of what she knows, to talk about some kind of possible, protection from prosecution. They wouldn't even go there with her. They were much more interested in a witch hunt and a show trial.
You don't get to say to the Congress of the United States on something like this, oh, we'll just tell you vaguely what we were doing or how we were doing it.
Michael, the cavalry has arrived, and you're in the infantry. The cavalry has arrived on the Democratic side, which it rarely does. We've caught them. The American people have caught the Republicans making money on this, and this is something that's not up for debate.
Right.
The National Republican Campaign Committee is out there raising money on the House Select Committee hearing on Benghazi with an email that reads, quote, stand with Congressman Trey Gowdy, the Benghazi Select Committee, the House Republicans, as we fight for the truth about what happened with the Benghazi terrorist attack. Help fight liberals by donating today. Well, Politico today lists other Republican fundraising efforts using Benghazi, including one from Superhawk John Bolton. Here's how Politico describes it. A John Bolton Political Action Committee email from April accused Obama, Clinton, and former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta of refusing to take responsibility for, and this is Bolton's line, leaving Americans to die in the hands of terrorists.
Right.
And late today on the House floor, the ranking member of the Oversight Committee, Elijah Cummings, called on Speaker Boehner to end Republican fundraising off the Benghazi probe. Let's listen to Elijah Cummings.
They have been using the deaths of these 4 Americans for political campaign fundraising. I call on the Speaker of the House to end that process right now. With all due respect, if the Republicans want to fix the problems with their partisan investigation, they need more than just a new chairman. I have a tremendous respect for Mr. Gowdy, and I'm glad that he said that the fundraising should not be done on the deaths of these 4 people. And I hope that the Republican conference will finally agree with that. We are better than that.
Well, here's the question, are they or not? The Republican today at his weekly press briefing, House Speaker Boehner was questioned rather well by Luke Russert of NBC about whether it was appropriate to raise money over the deaths of Americans overseas. By the way, one of these fundraisers asked for $500 for the 4 dead Americans. It was ruthless. Here's Luke Russert going after Boehner, asking him if he thinks it's appropriate.
Speaker Boehner, 4 Americans died in Benghazi. Should the NRCC fundraise off of your efforts with the Select Committee?
Our focus is on getting the answers to those families who lost their loved ones, period.
But should the NRCC, they're fundraising off of it right now. Is that a wise thing to do?
Our focus is getting the truth for these 4 families and for the American people.
But the campaign committee, which you are very involved in, is fundraising off of this. Why is that happening?
Our focus is on getting the truth for the American people and these 4 families.
No controlling legal authority. I mean, why didn't he answer the question, Chairman Steele?
Let's just put it out here. You should back up his chairman of the Select Committee. Congressman Gowdy is absolutely right. There should be no fundraising on this issue. It is disrespectful to the deceased. It is disrespectful to their families, and it is disrespectful to the process that the Republican leadership wants to pursue. And so, if you're serious about the impact of Benghazi, then show it by pulling back off the fundraising. Look, you're going to raise your money. You're not going to raise $1 more off of this than you would off of something else.
Former chairman of the Republican National Committee says it's wrong to raise money off of Benghazi.
I support
Is that right?
the chairman. I support Chairman Gowdy 100% on this. He's absolutely right, and the leadership need to back him up.
That is a stunning abdication of responsibility by John Boehner, I have to say. I mean, seriously. But it goes back to when he once told us that it wasn't his business to tell the American people or his members what to think about whether the president was born in this country. I mean, he has a habit of doing it. But for him not to back up Trey Gowdy and say, of course we're not going to fundraise on this, and I've told it, and I want it to stop. I want it to stop. It's stunning that he wouldn't do that.
You're one of these reporters that keeps their file cabinet in their head all the time. Joan, you know what's going on, and you remember. I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. You're so good at remembering it. You're right. And by the way, I'm sure Chairman Reince Priebus will back up everything you said, Michael Steele. In fact,
no doubt.
I'm just kidding. I'm being totally sarcastic. The RNC chairman has no guts to stand up against this crappy raising money off dead people. It's horrible. It's ridiculous. Morally, it's absurd. And by the way, I think, Michael, you nailed him on it better than I could. Michael Steele, thank you for joining us. And Joan Walsh, catching people raising money off horrors overseas. Coming up, we've been actually saying for years here that the new Republican restrictions were going to make it harder for people to vote. And now in North Carolina, we talked about scaring up vote. They're scaring it away. They're using signs. We've got signs now as of the primaries this week in North Carolina, a state I've come to love. They're screwing people out of voting, and it's already working. Plus, a school assignment, believe this or not, in 2014, asking 8th graders out in California to write whether the Holocaust was real or whether it was a hoax. Holocaust denial, answer 2. Was it just an ignorant assignment or evidence that Holocaust denial is gaining credibility in some schoolrooms? Also, Michelle Bachmann, remember her? Was for it before she was against it, and now she's really against it. What is it? Well, that's coming up in a sideshow. You can't miss her. Finally, let me finish tonight with how nasty campaigns to roll up the score can come back to bite you. And this is Hardball, Place for Politics.